intellectual deficiencies, fetishism, racial defects, slave ships, and above all else, Yabon Banania. As Boclé reminds us, Léopold Sédar Senghor, dubbed one of the fathers of negritude, declared in 1948, so 100 years after the abolition of slavery in the French West Indies, I will rip up all the banania smiles from all the walls of France. It wasn't until about 10 years ago that Banania decided to modify the Banania Man by giving him a more useful appearance. However, the old design is seen and bought everywhere on mugs, boxes, aprons, posters, postcards. All in all, does this indicate that the memory of slavery and colonialism is easier to stomach when the black body can actually be literally consumed? In this short presentation, I have attempted to demonstrate how Jean-François Boclé's performative use of collected objects enables him to reclaim silence histories, memories, and Martinican trajectories as muted identity. I tried to show how his pieces create an artistic language that shows the seemingly immutable nature of the tensions revealed by the display of colonial history. By resorting to the poetics of La Récup to contest the main narrative, Boclé might open a much-needed dialogue about the absence and presence of the African diaspora within world history.
Okay, so we have 15 minutes for questions, both.
Jeanette? Yeah, Jeanette?
Oh, Jeanne?
Oh, Jeanne.
Jeanne.
Okay, Jeanne. Jean. I have a question about that. I never saw this representation of Banana Man. It's a soldier, maybe the French army or something like that?
Yes, from the Senegalese troop, a Senegalese foot soldier. It was done in 1915, actually, yes, the day he was in there.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just wondering why they would choose the image of a soldier to represent Banana Man. You know, for instance, like here in the United States, they have the Aunt Jemima image, the black servant, etc. So why would they choose that image to represent banana?
Oh, so it's banana, so it's chocolate, right? So it's a reference to chocolate, not necessarily to banana.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but there's obviously like a, yes, there's an audible resemblance with the banana, actually. But think about the connection between France, because this is a French ad, the connection between France and its colony, and this desire to actually encourage or justify the colonizing project to the population and to make the black body more understandable to the French population. So the idea also with Yabon is actually broken French, right? So you have the connection between the black body and the incapability to be assimilated within the French population. And what actually happened with these foot soldiers, some of them were actually located in France, is that the generals, I mean the people in the French army, would purposefully teach them broken French so that they could not communicate with the French population. So this is the image that is actually evoked in that chocolate powder box.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Can I jump in? Because actually, Holland writes about this kind of illustration as participating in the myth, the colonial myth of France, that these soldiers, and there were representations like this in advertising, but also in newspapers. This is the image of assimilation. That's the image that colonialism brings you modernity. It brings these African population into modernity, and it assimilate them potentially into a useful role within the French Republic. So that's why they picked a black soldier as a marketing campaign, because it participates in this myth building around French colonialism.
Thank you.
On from there, this is again a matter more of psychology, I think, to understand this. But back in the 1940s or so, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, in Central Europe, you had chocolate, and this was with Saroti. And it was a Saroti boy, and that was, yes, a black African. And never clear why one would have a black African face that would have to go with whatever chocolate they ate. But there was a Sarati boy. Huh. I think only psychologists will understand, if they ever understand what's going on.
Well, you know, just adding, I don't want to dominate time, but this is an interesting anecdote. When I was in France for the first time.
When was that?
Way back in the 60s. I was sitting at a rugby game, and this little boy was dragging his mother. He wanted to sit next to me for some reason or another. And he sat next to me. He made believe I wasn't there. But then, after about 30 seconds, he looked up at me and said, "Bonjour, Monsieur de Chocolat."
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah, which is interesting because
that's exactly in the right.
Yeah, another African guy from Ghana I met. There used to be a fair where they would demonstrate their products. You know, I said, "I'm from Ghana. This is what we do in Ghana. These are some crafts from Ghana." And a little boy asked him if he drank a lot of coffee. Or if his father owned, he said, "Does your father own a coffee plantation?" And he said, "No." He said, "Well, you drink a lot of coffee?" And he says, "Not really." He says, 1 or 2 cups a day. And the little kid said, "Well, how come you're so black?" So I think a lot of times, actually white families, parents teach their children that people are black because they drink coffee or because they eat chocolate or whatnot. So that's where the association comes in.
I've got a question for both of you. Thank you both for your presentation. This is really rich material. You both engage with Glissant's idea of opacity, and you engage with what I understand as being one aspect of opacity, which is, you know, in the poetics of relation, where Glissant is arguing for a melting of intersubjectivity, opacity is what prevents homogenization and the total loss of the self. And he traces the idea to a sort of resistance to the colonial and the ethnographic gaze. But the other idea in opacity is that throughout the colonial period, power was maintained by the plantation owners and then the colonial powers of actual exhibitionism, that these people have to be seen all the time to maintain their grasp on power, which is something that you did not engage with, and I was wondering if you could, you know, both of you either engage with that aspect of opacity, which is a demand for a more equal way of seeing and of being seen. The demand that the person who has been perpetrating the gaze up to a certain point now accepts being looked at. So how does this work for the visual artist with whom, upon, you know, whom you write
I'll bring up that.
Yes.
Just looking at this image again, when I was talking about inhabiting the space of exposure and obscurity, like wanting to be seen, but only enough to show that you're not showing all. So these. This masking is demanding visibility in a way to participate for representation in a society, but only to a certain point, still maintaining that opacity in order to have the self not be completely taken over by the colonizer. But the visibility is necessary in order to demand representation or to make visible the injustices that have been suffered.
Yeah, that right to opacity, again, the right to non-solidarization from another point, and the reason why I focus on this aspect is that with conversation that I had with West West Indians, French West Indian artists, that always say that the relationship between the colony, I mean, that's why I kept referring to the colony, right, instead of overseas territories. They say that, yeah, the power dynamics have not shifted at all, and they are always seen as, there's always seen within a colonial framework, whereas the metropole is overrepresented within their own culture. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but this is why I really wanted to focus on how artists want to have their own language and own their own representation without so much wanting to focus on the metropole itself.
Yeah, well, also thank you for both presentations, really interesting. But I wonder if you can comment on either if you collected information on the impact of these exhibits on the audience, like, or if not, you can speculate on that, because you have the power of images that are so strong, and then you're bringing that to the contemporary context and try to link that with things that are going on now, like. You have something that is aesthetically appealing, like the ones that you showed about the fragility of the smiles of strangers. Also the title captures that you see something aesthetically appealing, and then you get closer, and then it hits you in the face. So if you can comment on that.
So as for the images that I showed, I mean, Boclé's art and the way that he's received by a French audience, you notice that, I mean, I don't know if you noticed if I actually showed where most of the pieces were shown. Lots of them were shown outside of France, actually, in other European places, or in the Caribbean, or in Latin America. And he was always telling, I mean, the conversation that he had with the proud descendant of enslavers was pretty clear. It's, well, forget about the past. And this is why the commemoration of slavery and the history of colonialism had to be written into law for people to add it to textbook and make it part of the French narrative. But this is still extremely controversial, and he's not necessarily positively received by the French audience, who don't want to be bothered with that history, and who, again, the reaction is forget about that was the past. So,
in this, all I have is the review that was done of the work that when it was shown in Canada, which the title was "Not for the Faint of Heart." So I think the review took into account that this is a very difficult. It's a difficult exhibit to see, especially when you're looking at the text in relation to the drawings. But I do think that the images initially draw in the viewer, and they're kind of intrigued, or they want to know more. And actually, the analysis of the diary that I mentioned, Mastery, Tyranny, and Desire, is a very enthralling book. It has you keep reading, but it's documenting page after page of these terrible atrocities. And similar to the abolitionist consumption of these images for good, like the images of the 5 year expedition were circulated, and they were read by many people. I think that sometimes the violence of the images is disconnected from the stories, and this work is precisely to bring the text, to collide the text with the images, so that people do not forget.
I have a question for Jeanne. I really liked the presentation, and I hadn't heard of this artist, and his work seems really fascinating. And I wonder if sort of the pieces that had to do with bananas, there was an obvious sort of dense concentration of social and environmental issues, among other things, at play there. And I'm wondering if some of those same environmental concerns could be read into the piece about the boat. you alluded and talked a little bit about the importance of using found objects, of using things that have been thrown away. And so I wonder if using all those cardboard boxes and thinking about the impact of consumer society and industrialism, how that manifests itself in Martinique, and so why use boxes that things are shipped in particularly, and what that might not only say about the Middle Passage and the history of slavery and oppression, but also current environmental issues in Martinique.
Well, I'm not completely, I don't know that much about environmental issues, even though I know that they do exist. But there's another piece that might be of interest to you where he uses plastic bags, right, to characterize the sea, right? The use of all these plastic bags kind of, I mean, it's kind of mimics the ocean. So it's also denouncing the overuse of ecological, environmental issues in that one piece. But I would not be able to say how it applies specifically to Martinique.
Okay.
Yes.
Or maybe to a larger West Indian context. I don't know if that. Yeah. But thank you very much. That's good.
Can I ask about the reception that Gardner's work has had in the Caribbean itself? I mean, it must have actually had reverberations back in the region. And have you read anything that's been written about it in Jamaica or Barbados?
I haven't. I know that it has been exhibited once in the Caribbean, but or
Where?
the specific.
In which island?
I don't remember right now, but no, I will. Yes, I will look into that as well.
It would seem that, just to follow up, it would seem that because Thistlewood's experience was on Jamaica, that it would have a greater impact there in conversation with the Trevor Bernard book.
They both came out the same year. They were both the same year.
Since no one else is speaking, I'll keep asking questions. This is also a question for you, Nicole. In keeping up with this idea of audience and how these works are received, I couldn't help but be a little shocked by the picture that you have on your slide with the title "Not for the Faint of Heart," which I imagine is a picture of the artist herself by her work. And to me, there's a weird dissonance there between this smiling white woman next to this particular piece of work. Am I the only one to see that and to be a little disturbed by it? And I wonder if you've encountered responses to that particular representation. I mean, this is weird,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I haven't used this image yet.
Was this published in a newspaper, or?
It was. It was along with the article of the review.
This is like, it's not for the faint of heart, but your suburban mom, and she's very happy.
Yes, I mean, I to be honest, my initial reaction was this image and just this project was more critical of the artist's position, but she's exploring dissociation and white culpability and her role in all of this and in other, and sometimes I think that some of the works focus on feminism at the expense of other inequalities, and that was a criticism that I have or something that I sometimes thought took away from other arguments. But I think from when I really worked with her piece, I think that it's an honest gesture to explore her position without ignoring the privilege that involves, and that's kind of an intellectual position that I myself am in, and that I also encounter the same issues of talking about very traumatic issues and having the right tone or how you deal with that in
I never saw this representation of Banana Man. It's a soldier, maybe
It's
the French army or something like
from
that?
a Senegalese troop, a Senegalese foot
Okay.
soldier. It was done in 1915, actually, yes. that they live in there.
Okay, I mean, I'm just wondering why they would choose the image of a soldier to represent Banana Man. For instance, like here in the United States, they have the Aunt Jemima image, you know, the black servant, etc. So why would they choose that image to represent banana?
Oh, so it's banana, so it's chocolate, right? So it's of La Récup. To contest the main narrative, Boclé might open a much-needed dialogue about the absence and presence of the African diaspora within world history.
Okay, so we have 15 minutes for questions, both.
Jeanette? Yeah, Jeanette?
Oh, Jeanne?
Oh, Jeanne.
Jeanne.
Okay, Jeanne. Jean. I have a question about that.
Intellectual deficiencies, fetishism, racial defects, slave ships, and above all else, Yabon Banania. As Boclé reminds us, Léopold Sédar Senghor, dubbed one of the fathers of negritude, declared in 1948, so 100 years after the abolition of slavery in the French West Indies, I will rip up all the banana smiles from all the walls of France. It wasn't until about 10 years ago that Banania decided to modify the Banana Man by giving him a more useful appearance. However, the old design is seen and bought everywhere on mugs, boxes, aprons, posters, postcards. All in all, those indicate that the memory of slavery and colonialism is easier to stomach when the black body can actually be literally consumed. In this short presentation, I have attempted to demonstrate how Jean-François Boclé's performative use of collected objects enables him to reclaim silenced histories, memories, and Martinican trajectories as muted identity. I tried to show how his pieces create an artistic language that shows the seemingly immutable nature of the tensions revealed by the display of colonial history. By resorting to the poetics, a reference to chocolate, not necessarily to banana.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But there's obviously like a, yes, there's an audible resemblance with the banana actually. But think about the connections between France, because this is a French ad, the connection between France and its colony, and this desire to actually encourage or justify the colonizing project to the population and to make the black body more understandable to the French population. So the idea also with Yabon is actually broken French, right? So you have the connection between the black body and the incapability to be assimilated